What will we cover? I would say that there's four sort of general themes of how the program is structured. The first theme is just around looking at what does leadership look like in this context. So in many contexts, we're trying to lead, where you can't do it by directive. It's not about sending a memo or telling people what to do, but you really need to engage people where they are. And you need to get people on board because most of the change efforts that we've seen tend to fail. I know that one of the things we talk about in my consulting career at McKinsey is that 70, 80% of change attempts fail. And that's usually because people aren't engaging their organization victims and their corporations in the way that they need to. So how do you engage in that complexity, whether it's an industry that's being disrupted or things are actually going quite well, but there's a certain complacency there? How do you call attention to what matters and get people engaged and involved in that work? To collaborate better, to innovate. The second big theme that we'll look at is this question of diagnosis. So one of the things that we've seen in our work of teaching leadership here at the Kennedy School and the law school over the last 40 years is that one of the biggest mistakes that people tend to make in the work of leadership is a diagnostic error. And because they don't spend sufficient time really understanding the systems that they're trying to intervene into and what it is that they're asking people to do, what losses, for example, that they're asking people to absorb and what that will take, they tend to apply either cookie cutter solutions that have worked elsewhere. So you're going for best in class, for example, rather than best fit, or you're trying to rewire, performance management systems, et cetera, without really thinking about what is it that I'm trying to work with. And most of the institutions that we're in are old, they're established. There's, established power relationships and dynamics. There's internal and external factors that we need to take into account when you're trying to introduce change. And we don't do enough work doing that diagnostic work. So we'll spend a lot of time really honing those diagnostic skills, and not in a theoretical way, but actually practicing those skills together over the course of the 4 days that we're together. The third big theme is around intervention. What does it mean to intervene into these complex systems, to mobilize group resources, to orchestrate conflict and a productive disequilibrium, which is a necessary and very important part of doing change work, but something that we as human beings, and even as lawyers, as good as we are at advocating for our clients, tend to shy away from. So how do you hold people in that space of creativity, innovation, disappointment, disruption? What does strategic intervention look like in that context? And then finally, the fourth theme that we'll look at is really looking at you as someone who's trying to exercise leadership. How do we understand more about your tuning, how it is that you make sense of the world, how it is that we sometimes get in our own way. And by having that increased self-knowledge, increase your self-discipline and your ability to be able to actually sort of, reach into and step into leadership opportunities more effectively.